Robert Hawthorne had just returned from a grueling week of business meetings and high-stakes deals in downtown Manhattan. The streets of New York buzzed with the usual chaos: yellow taxis weaving between luxury cars, street vendors calling out their wares, and the occasional siren slicing through the city noise. But Robert hardly noticed any of it. His mind was occupied with the presentation he had delivered that morning and the urgent matters awaiting him at his office. Yet nothing in his week could have prepared him for what awaited inside his own mansion. As he stepped out of his sleek black limousine, the towering glass facade of his Manhattan estate gleamed in the afternoon sun. Security cameras, state-of-the-art alarms, and manicured gardens surrounded the property, a fortress of wealth and power. Robert adjusted his tailored navy suit, straightened his tie, and mentally prepared himself for a quiet evening at home, expecting to see his family as he had always imagined after long, stressful trips: calm, orderly, and obedient. He opened the grand double doors and immediately froze. His eyes scanned the dining room, expecting the familiar sight of empty chairs and silence, perhaps his staff going about their usual duties. But what he saw made his heart skip a beat, and then skip again in disbelief. There, at the dining table, sat Ethan, his 10-year-old son, hunched over a pile of textbooks and notebooks. Beside him was a young Black Maid, perhaps in her early 20s, with neatly braided hair and a warm, attentive expression. She was pointing at a complicated math problem, explaining something with patience, and Ethan was scribbling furiously, nodding and understanding. Robert's hand froze mid-air as he held the door handle. His mind raced, trying to process what he was seeing. Who is this? Why is she in our house? His internal voice screamed in disbelief. He felt a mixture of shock, anger, and confusion. The mansion had never seen such a scene. No outsider had ever dared enter without his express permission. Ethan looked up from his work, eyes wide with a mixture of guilt and excitement. "Dad, she's helping me with math," he stammered. His voice was hesitant, almost apologetic, yet hopeful. Robert took a step forward, each movement deliberate and heavy, like the steps of a man walking toward an unimaginable confrontation. "Helping you? Ethan, this is completely unacceptable." His voice trembled, a combination of anger and disbelief. "She cannot just be here in my house without permission. Who allowed this?" Ethan swallowed hard, fidgeting with his pencil. I brought her, just for today. She's really good at math. And I have a big test tomorrow, Dad. I needed her help." Robert's eyes darted to Jasmine, who looked calm but slightly tense. She had obviously sensed the storm brewing, but did not flinch. I didn't mean to intrude, sir. I was only helping your son with his homework. I didn't expect—" She paused, unsure of how to continue without causing more offense. Robert's chest tightened. His mind was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Rage, because an unauthorized person had entered his private space. Disbelief, because a 10-year-old had defied him so boldly, and an unexpected flicker of curiosity, because she seemed competent and focused. He could feel the blood rushing to his head, heart pounding. He had always been a man who controlled every aspect of his life, yet here was a scenario he had never anticipated. "You brought her into my home?" Robert's voice rose, cracking slightly under the weight of his anger. "Ethan, this is outrageous. How could you even think this was allowed?" Ethan's lower lip trembled. "Dad, I just wanted to pass my test. She's really smart. She helps me understand things I can't figure out on my own." His voice broke, and tears threatened to spill. Robert took a deep breath, trying to regain composure. He closed the door behind him, the click echoing through the vast hallways of the mansion. He looked at Jasmine, trying to gauge her intentions. She was young, polite, and professional. Her uniform, simple yet neat, belied the seriousness and dedication she brought to her work. The billionaire's mind raced. He had built his empire on rules, discipline, and control. And now, he faced a situation where his 10-year-old son had taken matters into his own hands. How could a child dare make such a bold decision? And yet, he couldn't ignore the results. Ethan was clearly learning, progressing, and genuinely benefiting from her guidance. Robert's eyes softened slightly as he observed his son scribbling down solutions, a look of concentration and satisfaction on his face. The anger lingered, yes, But beneath it, a surge of pride emerged. Ethan was resourceful. He had found someone capable to help him succeed, and perhaps, just perhaps, this young woman could indeed provide value to his son, and maybe to the family as a whole. But the immediate issue remained. Protocol had been violated. Rules had been broken. And Robert, above all, valued order and control. He would have to address this carefully. Robert walked into the room fully now, every step measured and deliberate. He closed the distance between himself and the pair at the table. "Ethan," he said, voice stern but slightly quieter now. "We need to talk. And you, Miss Jasmine, I need to understand why you thought it was appropriate to enter my house without permission." Ethan shifted nervously, glancing at Jasmine, then back at his father. Jasmine straightened, meeting Robert's gaze evenly. There was no fear, only a calm composure that somehow defied the tension in the room. Robert exhaled, realizing this confrontation would not be quick or simple. He had returned home expecting rest, comfort, and control, and instead found his authority challenged in the most unexpected of ways. Narrator. In that moment, Robert realized that the day he thought would be ordinary had already become extraordinary. What he would decide next could either shatter the peace in his home or transform it forever. The room fell silent, the only sound being the scratching of Ethan's pencil and the faint hum of the city outside. Robert's eyes darted between his son and the young maid, processing, calculating, wondering what the next move should be. And in that pause, the weight of the situation settled heavily upon him. The billionaire had returned home, but he would not leave this room unchanged. Robert Hawthorne's mind raced as he stood in the grand dining room, his tailored suit immaculate, yet his composure fraying at the edges. The chandelier above cast sparkling reflections across the polished marble floor, yet nothing in the room seemed to shine brighter than the anger boiling within him. Ethan, 10 years old, sat nervously, twisting his pencil, glancing between his father and Jasmine, the young Black Maid who had, without permission, crossed the invisible barrier of the Hawthorne mansion. Robert took a slow, deliberate breath, trying to contain the storm rising inside him, but the words exploded before he could fully control them. "Ethan, do you understand the magnitude of what you've done?" His voice reverberated through the room, echoing against the high ceilings. "You brought a complete stranger into this house, into my house, a place that has rules, security, and boundaries that you just ignored." Ethan flinched, looking down at his notebook. I just wanted to study, Dad. She helps me with math. I have the final exam tomorrow." His voice was small, almost inaudible, but it carried a tremor of desperation. I wanted to pass." Robert's eyes narrowed, jaw tightening. He could see the earnestness in Ethan's expression, the fear and hope mingling in the child's gaze. And yet, that did not lessen the anger. The billionaire's life had been built on precision, on order, on control. Every aspect of his empire was measured, calculated, and guarded. And here was his son, 10 years old, upending the rules of the household with one audacious decision. "You thought it was acceptable to disregard everything we've built?" Robert's voice rose, echoing again. "The security, the staff, the rules that keep this house safe just so you could, what? Have a tutor sit at the dining table?" Jasmine, calm yet tense, stood beside Ethan. Her posture was straight, professional, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of anxiety. "Sir," she said softly, "I didn't intend to disrespect your home. I only wanted to help Ethan. He's a bright boy, but he struggles with this subject, and I wanted to ensure he succeeded." Robert's hands clenched into fists. He walked closer to the table, pacing slowly, each step deliberate, as though the weight of the floor beneath him matched the weight of his outrage. "Do you understand the gravity of your intrusion?" He fixed Jasmine with a piercing gaze. "You entered my private residence without permission. This is not acceptable behavior in any circumstances. Do you have any idea what could have happened if something went wrong?" Ethan swallowed, his small body trembling slightly. I didn't think..." He looked at Jasmine, as if seeking backup, but she gave a subtle nod, silently urging him to stay calm. Robert turned sharply to his son, his face a mask of fury and disbelief. "Ethan, Do you understand that your actions could have consequences far beyond a simple math problem? This is a house protected by alarms, security cameras, and staff. You cannot just decide who enters and who doesn't. Ethan's voice quivered. I just, I didn't want to fail, Dad. This test, it's really important. I need to pass. I didn't think it would be such a big deal. Robert's chest heaved. He wanted to scream, to strike, to punish, anything to reassert the control that had been so blatantly defied. But as he looked at Ethan, fear and determination mixed with innocence and desperation, he felt the first flicker of a different emotion. Understanding. He remembered his own childhood, the pressure of expectations, the crushing weight of knowing that failure was not an option. The memory hit him with surprising clarity, how he himself might have acted similarly if faced with an insurmountable challenge. And yet, this did not erase the violation of his authority. Robert's hands ran through his hair, his mind spinning. He needed to respond, not with blind anger, but with measured authority, though the temptation to unleash the storm inside him was nearly irresistible. He took another deep breath, forcing calm, yet the tension in his body remained palpable. "Jasmine," he said, his tone still sharp but controlled. "You are competent, I can see that. But competence does not excuse disrespecting the rules of this house. You need to understand that even the most well-intentioned actions can have serious consequences if they violate boundaries." Jasmine nodded solemnly. "I understand, sir. I meant no disrespect. I only wanted to help your son succeed." Robert turned back to Ethan, whose eyes were brimming with tears. "Ethan, do you understand that your decision could have put both of you at risk? You cannot make these kinds of choices on your own. Do you understand?" I understand, Dad," Ethan whispered, voice barely audible. Robert exhaled, pacing again. The anger was still there, simmering beneath the surface, but his mind was beginning to shift. He observed Jasmine again, noting her patience, intelligence, and dedication. She was young, yes, but there was a calm confidence in the way she guided his son through the math problems. Ethan's notebook was filled with correct calculations, proofs that he had learned and understood concepts he had previously struggled with. Robert paused, considering the implications. Perhaps, he thought, this was not just an intrusion, it was an opportunity. The audacity of his son's actions, the brilliance of the young tutor, and the dedication he saw in her work could be harnessed if handled correctly. Yet the immediate issue remained. The breach of trust. Robert's voice softened slightly, though still firm. "Ethan, you need to learn that rules exist for a reason. But I also see that you were trying in your own way to solve a problem. That determination, I cannot fault entirely. Jasmine, your help is evident, but rules are rules. We must find a way to reconcile the two." The room fell silent. Ethan looked at his father, hope flickering. Jasmine remained calm, attentive, waiting for guidance. Robert felt a strange mix of anger, pride, and curiosity swirl inside him. The situation was unprecedented, challenging, yet somehow revealing hidden potential, not just in his son, but in the young tutor who had dared cross the threshold of the Hawthorne mansion. The storm of anger had not fully passed, but a seed of understanding had been planted. Robert Hawthorne, billionaire and master of control, now faced a choice: punish and reprimand, or adapt and embrace the unexpected brilliance that had arrived at his doorstep. He finally stepped back, folding his arms across his chest, eyes still sharp but contemplative. "Ethan, we will discuss consequences later. Jasmine, we will also discuss your future in this house. For now, you may continue, but understand this: boundaries must be respected at all times." The tension lingered, thick in the air like an approaching storm. Outside, the New York City noise continued, oblivious to the drama unfolding inside one of its most opulent homes. Inside, a father, a son, and a young tutor sat in quiet anticipation, knowing that the day's events would not be forgotten, and that the resolution was only just beginning. The atmosphere in the Hawthorne mansion had shifted slightly, but remained thick with tension. Robert Hawthorne, still towering in his tailored navy suit, leaned against the marble counter in the dining room, his arms crossed, eyes fixed on Ethan. The young boy fidgeted nervously, glancing at Jasmine, who had quietly returned to her place at the table, textbooks spread neatly before her. Ethan knew he had crossed a line. The fear of his father's anger was still fresh, pressing against his chest like a weight he couldn't shake. He chewed his lower lip, trying to muster words that could explain his actions without inciting more fury. "Dad, I didn't think it would be such a big deal," he whispered, almost inaudible over the faint hum of the city outside. I just really needed help. Jasmine. She's the only one who can explain it so I can understand." Robert's gaze softened for a moment, but the stern lines of his face remained. "Ethan, you must understand something. It is a big deal. This house, this family, everything I've worked for relies on structure, on order. When you act on your own without permission, you undermine that structure. Do you see that?" Ethan nodded quickly, swallowing hard. "I see. I didn't want to fail, Dad. The test, it's really important. I need to do well." His small voice trembled with the weight of expectation. Robert sighed deeply, pacing slowly in front of the table. He could feel the conflict raging inside him. Anger at the disobedience, concern for his son, and, surprisingly, a flicker of admiration for Ethan's initiative. The boy had taken a risk, yes, but it was a calculated one. He had thought through a solution and acted on it. That thought made Robert's mind race. "Ethan," Robert said, his voice firm but measured now, "you did something reckless. But I also see that you were trying to solve a problem. I cannot ignore the determination behind your actions, even if I do not condone the method." Ethan blinked in surprise, a small spark of relief lighting his eyes. "Really?" he asked, almost in disbelief. "Yes," Robert replied, though his voice carried an edge. "But you must understand that determination alone is not enough. Decisions without thinking through consequences can lead to disaster. Do you understand what could have happened if—" He paused, shaking his head, letting the thought trail off. The mansion was heavily guarded, but hypothetically, a stranger entering unauthorized could have caused chaos. Or worse. Jasmine, sensing the subtle shift in Robert's tone, spoke softly, her voice calm but respectful. "Sir, I never intended to cause trouble. My only goal was to help Ethan succeed. I understand the rules of your home and respect them completely. I just wanted to ensure he understood the material for his test tomorrow." Robert turned his piercing gaze on her, studying every movement, every subtle gesture. He noticed her composure, the way she held herself with quiet confidence, and the care in her teaching. Her professionalism and competence were undeniable, and it irritated him slightly that he had to acknowledge it. Yet, grudgingly, he admitted to himself that her presence had tangible value. "You have skills," Robert said, his voice measured but still carrying authority. "I can see that. But skills alone do not excuse the breach of trust. You must learn to navigate boundaries as carefully as you navigate lessons." "Yes, sir," Jasmine replied immediately, bowing her head slightly in deference. Her tone was firm yet polite, showing that she understood the gravity of the situation while maintaining her dignity. Robert returned his attention to Ethan. "Now you, my son, need to learn a lesson as well. Actions have consequences. Today's lesson is not just about mathematics, but about judgment. You cannot act impulsively, no matter how noble your intentions may seem. Do you understand that?" Ethan swallowed hard, nodding. I understand, Dad. I'm sorry, I wanted to do well." Robert's stern expression softened slightly, but the tension in the room remained palpable. He walked to the window, staring out at the skyline of Manhattan, his mind working rapidly. The decision his son had made, though reckless, revealed two things: Ethan's initiative and Jasmine's skill. Both were traits Robert valued highly: initiative, intelligence, and dedication. Yet they had been displayed in a way that challenged the very order he prized. He turned back to face them, his eyes sharp but contemplative. "Ethan, I will consider your motives, but you must remember this. Rules are not arbitrary. They exist to protect, to structure, and to guide. Understanding that is part of growing up." "Yes, Dad," Ethan said, trying to absorb every word, his mind racing with a mixture of guilt and hope. Robert's gaze softened further as he looked at Jasmine again. He realized that punishing her would be unfair. She had only acted to help his son with patience, skill, and dedication. A different part of him, the one that valued talent and resourcefulness, began to consider the possibilities. Perhaps this young woman could provide more than just temporary tutoring. Perhaps she could become an asset to the family in a more permanent way. But first, he needed to fully understand the situation. He approached the table slowly, taking a seat across from them. "Jasmine, tell me everything," he said. "How did this arrangement come about? How did Ethan convince you to come here?" Jasmine explained carefully, detailing how she had noticed Ethan's struggles with a particularly challenging unit in mathematics, and how she had offered additional help after school. She had agreed to come for one session at his home, thinking it would be more convenient and effective. Her tone was calm, professional, yet sincere, highlighting her genuine concern for Ethan's success. Ethan chimed in, adding his perspective, describing how he had begged her for extra help because he feared failing an important exam. "I just wanted to understand," he said, voice small. "I didn't want to disappoint anyone. Especially you, Dad." Robert listened intently, the anger in his chest gradually being replaced by a complex mix of admiration and contemplation. His son had shown initiative, a willingness to take responsibility for his own learning, even if it meant bending rules. And Jasmine had demonstrated patience, intelligence, and a quiet authority that he could respect. The storm of anger was not entirely gone, but it had shifted. Robert realized that today's events were not just a violation, they were an opportunity. He could choose to punish, to scold, and enforce the rules strictly, or he could choose to recognize talent, reward initiative, and find a way to channel this energy productively. In that tense dining room, a father and son faced the consequences of choices made in desperation. But as the anger subsided, a new possibility emerged. A chance for growth, understanding, and perhaps even unexpected opportunity. Robert exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair. "Ethan, we will need to discuss boundaries and responsibilities later. Jasmine, we will need to discuss your role moving forward. But for now, continue your lesson. Let us see what can be accomplished when discipline and talent are allowed to meet." Ethan's eyes lit up with relief, and Jasmine smiled faintly, grateful for the chance to continue. Yet beneath the surface, Robert's mind was already calculating, planning, considering how this unexpected disruption could be transformed into a positive for his family and perhaps for himself. The dining room of the Hawthorne mansion was quiet again, the only sounds coming from the scratching of Ethan's pencil and the occasional flip of a textbook page. Robert Hawthorne leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, observing the scene with a mixture of lingering irritation and reluctant curiosity. Jasmine patiently guided Ethan through a complex series of algebraic equations, her explanations clear, precise, and surprisingly engaging for a 10-year-old. Ethan's brow furrowed in concentration as he followed her instructions, occasionally glancing up to ensure he was solving the problems correctly. "Okay, I think I get it now," he said hesitantly, his voice tinged with excitement. "So that's why I kept getting the answer wrong before. It's because I was forgetting to carry the negative sign here." "That's right," Jasmine said, smiling warmly. "You see, it's all about paying attention to the small details. Once you catch them, the rest falls into place. You've got a great mind, Ethan. You just need the right guidance to bring it out." Robert shifted his weight, his initial anger still simmering but increasingly replaced by astonishment. He had watched tutors come and go over the years, none capable of connecting with Ethan in the way Jasmine did. Her patience was remarkable, her ability to break down difficult concepts almost effortless, and most importantly, Ethan was genuinely learning. The boy's eyes sparkled with understanding, a look Robert had rarely seen when dealing with conventional teachers. "What makes her so effective?" Robert muttered under his breath, almost to himself. He had always been a man of numbers and results, and here was evidence that Jasmine's teaching was producing immediate, measurable success. It wasn't just tutoring. It was a revelation. Ethan, oblivious to his father's internal calculations, worked diligently, occasionally asking questions and receiving explanations that immediately made sense. "Miss Jasmine, what happens if I apply this formula to a word problem? Will it still work?" Jasmine nodded, guiding him step by step through a practical example. ensuring he understood not just the mechanics of the calculation, but the reasoning behind it. Robert noticed how she encouraged Ethan to think critically, to explore possibilities, and to challenge himself. There was a subtle brilliance in her methods, a depth that suggested she was not merely following a curriculum, but truly mentoring the child. Robert's mind raced with possibilities. Could this young woman be more than a temporary solution? Could she in fact become an integral part of their household? His initial anger at her presence seemed almost trivial compared to the undeniable skill she demonstrated. And yet, rules were rules. He had to find a balance, acknowledgement without compromising his authority. Ethan looked up, excitement gleaming in his eyes. "I think I finally understand it. The test tomorrow won't be so scary anymore." Jasmine smiled, clearly pleased with his progress. "Exactly, Ethan. You've worked hard, and now you're ready. Remember, understanding the process is more important than memorizing answers. You're capable of great things if you keep practicing like this." Robert stepped closer, clearing his throat to interrupt gently. "Ethan, you may have learned the math, but there's another lesson here," he said, his voice firm but not harsh. "It's about judgment, responsibility, and respecting boundaries. You acted on your own initiative, which shows creativity and problem-solving skills. But you must also understand that rules exist to protect you and everyone around you. Never forget that." Ethan nodded, absorbing both the praise and the warning. "I understand, Dad. I promise." Robert turned his attention back to Jasmine, studying her more closely than ever. "You've done impressive work today," he said. "Your ability to teach and connect with Ethan is exceptional. Most tutors I've encountered would have struggled to reach him at all, but you've demonstrated remarkable talent." Jasmine's cheeks flushed slightly at the compliment. "Thank you, sir. I wanted to help. I know how important this test is for him." Robert paused, considering his next words carefully. "I need to know, are you available to work with Ethan on a more regular basis? Not just for a day, but as a consistent presence?" Jasmine hesitated, aware of the gravity in his tone. I would be honored, sir. I enjoy teaching him, and I'd be happy to continue helping." Robert nodded slowly, a subtle smile forming at the corner of his mouth. He could already envision the possibilities: Ethan thriving academically, Jasmine providing guidance, and the household gaining not just a tutor, but someone capable, trustworthy, and intelligent. This was more than a solution to a temporary problem. It was an investment in his son's future, and perhaps in the future of the Hawthorne family itself. Ethan looked up, sensing a shift in the atmosphere. "Dad, does that mean—" His voice was hopeful, almost incredulous. "Yes," Robert said, his tone softening. "It means we recognize talent and dedication when we see it. You've shown initiative, Jasmine has shown skill, and together, you'll achieve more than either of you could alone." For the first time since he had returned home, Robert felt a sense of satisfaction. The anger had transformed into something productive, a plan, a resolution, a new path forward. He realized that sometimes unexpected disruptions were opportunities in disguise, and that today's chaos had revealed hidden genius that might have remained unnoticed otherwise. Jasmine smiled, her expression a mix of relief and pride. "Thank you, sir. I won't disappoint you." Robert's eyes met Ethan's. "And you, my son, will continue to learn, but always remember the importance of thinking ahead and respecting the boundaries that keep you safe. Your determination is commendable, but it must always be paired with responsibility." Ethan nodded eagerly, a sense of pride and relief washing over him. For the first time that day, he felt that he had not only survived his father's storm of anger, but had emerged stronger and more confident. Robert looked around the room, the sunlight streaming through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the marble floor. He realized that this unexpected day had not only tested his patience, but also reminded him of the value of perspective. Talent, dedication, and initiative could not be ignored, even when they arrived in unexpected forms. He leaned back slightly, letting the moment sink in. Today had been a lesson, not just for Ethan, but for himself as well. Sometimes brilliance appeared where least expected, and the measure of a leader, a father, or a businessman was the ability to recognize it, nurture it, and channel it effectively. Ethan continued his work, pencil moving swiftly across the paper, solving problems with newfound confidence. Jasmine guided him, her voice calm, patient, and encouraging. Robert watched silently, a quiet pride swelling within him. The storm of anger had passed, replaced by anticipation and possibility. He knew this was only the beginning. A single day had revealed so much: initiative, skill, potential, and the chance to transform a reckless decision into a meaningful opportunity. And as he observed the two of them, he realized that the unexpected could sometimes be the most powerful catalyst for growth, learning, and success. Robert Hawthorne remained standing near the window, watching Ethan continue his calculations, while Jasmine guided him patiently through another series of algebra problems. The sunlight streamed in, casting long shadows on the polished marble floor, reflecting the tension and complexity of the day. Robert's initial anger had softened, replaced by a mixture of contemplation, curiosity, and an unexpected admiration for Jasmine's ability to teach and connect with his son. He finally stepped closer, his footsteps deliberate, and cleared his throat to address them. "Ethan," he began, his tone firm but tempered, "we need to have a serious conversation about what happened today." Ethan's pencil froze mid-scribble. He swallowed hard, his eyes wide, still unsure how his father would react after the storm he had just witnessed. I know, Dad. I wanted to study, and I needed help." Robert folded his arms, staring at him intently. "You took a risk, a very serious risk. Bringing someone into this house without permission is not just a small mistake. It's a breach of trust. Do you understand that?" Ethan nodded quickly. "I understand. I didn't mean to disobey. I didn't know how else to do it. I was scared I might fail the test." His voice trembled slightly, carrying both fear and sincerity. Robert's gaze softened, and he exhaled slowly. "I see your fear, Ethan. I understand why you acted as you did. But understanding your reasoning does not excuse the disobedience. You need to learn that every decision has consequences, and sometimes those consequences can be serious." Jasmine observed silently, her hands folded neatly on the table. She had expected reprimand, but there was a subtle change in Robert's demeanor, an acknowledgement of both her competence and the motivation behind Ethan's actions. She didn't interrupt, knowing that this moment between father and son was crucial. Robert paced slowly, his mind racing as he tried to reconcile his anger with the unexpected opportunity that had presented itself. "Ethan," he said after a pause, "the fact that you were willing to take initiative shows a level of responsibility and determination I respect. But you must learn to pair that initiative with foresight. Acting impulsively, even with good intentions, can lead to serious trouble." Ethan nodded, a sense of relief and understanding dawning on him. "I promise, Dad. I'll be more careful. I'll ask first next time." Robert turned his attention to Jasmine. "And you? You have skills I rarely see in tutors. Your patience, your clarity, your ability to connect with Ethan, it's exceptional. But rules exist for a reason. You must understand the importance of boundaries even when your intentions are good." Jasmine bowed her head slightly. "Yes, sir. I understand completely. I meant no disrespect. I only wanted to help Ethan succeed." Robert exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "Today was a challenge, yes, but it also revealed something important. Talent and dedication can sometimes appear in the most unexpected forms. I cannot ignore what I have witnessed." He paused, weighing his next words carefully. "Ethan, what you did was risky, but it also showed ingenuity. Jasmine, your guidance has been remarkable. I am considering how we might formalize this arrangement to ensure both respect for the household and continued progress for my son." Ethan's eyes widened, hope flickering across his face. "You mean I can keep learning with her?" Robert nodded slowly. "Yes, but under proper conditions. This house has rules, and boundaries will be respected. Discipline and guidance must coexist with learning and growth." Jasmine's face reflected both relief and gratitude. "Thank you, sir. I will ensure everything is done properly. Ethan's progress is important to me, and I will respect the rules of your home." Robert nodded, turning to Ethan once more. "And you need to remember this lesson. Initiative is admirable, but judgment is equally important. Today was a learning experience for both of you." Ethan swallowed hard, his small shoulders straightening with determination. "I understand, Dad. I'll do better." Robert allowed himself a small smile. "Good. That is all I ask. Growth comes from both success and understanding mistakes. Remember this. The room fell silent for a moment, a quiet understanding settling over them. Ethan returned to his work, more focused than before, while Jasmine guided him patiently, now under the formal acknowledgement of Robert's authority and appreciation. Robert stood back, observing quietly, contemplating the events of the day. He realized that his initial anger had been a catalyst, but it had also uncovered something valuable. A young woman of skill, patience, and dedication, and a son willing to take initiative to overcome challenges. Both had revealed potential that might have gone unnoticed under ordinary circumstances. He felt a subtle shift in perspective. Perhaps the strict enforcement of rules could coexist with encouragement and opportunity. Perhaps this unexpected situation could be transformed into a structured environment for learning and growth, benefiting not just Ethan, but the household as a whole. Robert's thoughts turned to the future. How could he ensure that Jasmine's talents were fully utilized while maintaining the discipline of his home? How could Ethan continue to thrive without overstepping boundaries again? These questions demanded careful consideration, and Robert knew he would need to act decisively, but wisely. For now, he allowed the lesson to continue. Ethan was learning, Jasmine was guiding, and the household had begun to adjust to the presence of this unexpected but invaluable tutor. The storm had not fully passed, but the tension had shifted into a productive, contemplative energy. As Robert watched, he realized that the events of the day were more than a challenge. They were an opportunity. An opportunity to recognize talent, encourage initiative, and cultivate a balance between discipline and growth. And in that quiet moment, he knew that the lessons of today would shape not only his son's future, but potentially the course of the Hawthorne household for years to come. Ethan continued to work, more confident and focused, while Jasmine provided steady, calm guidance. Robert allowed himself a sense of satisfaction. The confrontation had revealed much, and while the day had been chaotic and filled with tension, it had also proven that even the most unexpected disruptions could yield remarkable results. He stepped away slightly, letting the two continue, a sense of anticipation building within him. The resolution of this day's events was only just beginning, and Robert understood that the lessons learned today would echo far beyond the walls of the mansion, shaping both his son's character and the family's future. After hours of tutoring and tense discussions, the mansion settled into an uneasy calm. Robert Hawthorne retreated to his study, a room lined with towering shelves of books and awards that chronicled decades of ambition, power, and success. The city skyline stretched beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, lights beginning to twinkle as dusk approached. Yet Robert's mind was far from the glittering streets outside. He sat behind his polished mahogany desk, fingers steepled, eyes narrowed in thought. Jasmine's unexpected competence had impressed him far more than he cared to admit. She wasn't just a tutor. She possessed a rare combination of intelligence, patience, and authority. And Ethan's progress had been undeniable. In that moment, Robert realized something. Perhaps the solution to this chaotic incident wasn't punishment alone. It was opportunity. He leaned back, recalling the morning's confrontation. Ethan had acted on impulse, yes, but with a noble goal: success. Jasmine had acted with skill and care, guiding his son toward understanding. Both had demonstrated qualities he valued deeply: initiative, intelligence, and perseverance. And yet, rules had been broken. Robert tapped a finger against the desk, weighing his options carefully. He could reprimand both, enforce strict discipline, and banish Jasmine from the mansion. Or he could find a way to transform the situation into something productive, a way to recognize talent while maintaining order. Finally, a plan began to form. He would offer Jasmine a formal position, one that allowed her to continue working with Ethan, but under proper guidelines. He would reward initiative and talent while setting clear boundaries that respected his household's rules. Rising from his desk, Robert walked to the large window, staring out over the city. Jasmine's skills could not be ignored. Her presence could be structured into the household, providing guidance for his son and perhaps even assisting in other educational matters. The idea sparked a sense of anticipation and control. He could turn a chaotic event into a calculated advantage. He summoned his assistant, a sharp-minded woman named Margaret, who handled the household staff and logistics with meticulous precision. Margaret, he said, his voice firm yet deliberate, I need you to prepare an employment proposal for Jasmine. I want her to continue tutoring Ethan, but officially with a defined schedule, responsibilities, and clear boundaries. I want this done professionally, no exceptions. Margaret raised an eyebrow, noting the unusual tone of the billionaire. Sir, are you sure? Considering how she arrived today? Yes, Robert interrupted, cutting her off. I've made my decision. Talent and initiative should be recognized, but discipline must be maintained. Ensure the proposal includes clear expectations and terms. I want her on board by tomorrow. Margaret nodded, quickly taking notes and leaving the room. Robert returned to his chair, deep in thought. He realized that his decision would change the dynamics of the mansion. A new presence would enter the household, but one carefully integrated into its structure. Jasmine's skills could be harnessed, Ethan's learning enhanced, and yet his authority would remain intact. The next morning, Robert called Jasmine to the study. She entered nervously, aware of the tension in the air but unaware of the proposal that awaited her. She stood with quiet confidence, hands folded politely in front of her, waiting for instructions. Jasmine, Robert began, his tone formal yet controlled. After careful consideration, I've decided that your work today demonstrates exceptional ability. I am offering you a position here as Ethan's personal tutor, officially employed by the Hawthorne household. Jasmine blinked in surprise, a mixture of relief and pride washing over her. Sir, Thank you. I won't disappoint you. Robert held up a hand, signaling her to remain calm. There will be terms and responsibilities. You will adhere to a defined schedule, follow household rules, and ensure that Ethan's progress is consistent. Your initiative and skill are recognized, but boundaries must be maintained at all times. Yes, sir, Jasmine replied, nodding respectfully. She understood the importance of this moment and the weight of Robert's approval. Robert leaned back, his sharp gaze softening slightly. Ethan's education is critical. Your role is not just to teach, but to mentor him, guide him, and ensure that his talents are fully realized. In return, you will be compensated fairly and treated with respect. Do you accept these terms? I accept, sir, Jasmine said firmly. Robert allowed himself a small smile. Good. Begin today. Show me the results of your guidance. Let us see what can be achieved when skill, dedication, and opportunity are aligned. Ethan, who had been waiting outside the study, peeked in cautiously. His eyes lit up when he saw Jasmine standing beside his father. Does this mean I get to learn from you every day? He asked, barely containing his excitement. Yes, Robert confirmed, his voice carrying both authority and approval. But remember, rules will be followed. Structure is as important as learning. Do not forget that, Ethan. Ethan nodded eagerly. I won't, Dad, I promise. As they left the study together, Robert observed them carefully. The atmosphere had shifted dramatically from the tension and anger of the previous day. A new dynamic had emerged, one of guidance, structure, and opportunity. Jasmine's skills would now be recognized and utilized, and Ethan's determination would be channeled productively. Robert realized that the unexpected events had revealed something crucial. Sometimes, initiative and talent appear in forms that challenge the status quo. Recognizing and integrating that talent could lead to extraordinary outcomes. Today's chaos had transformed into a calculated advantage, strengthening both the household and his son's future. He returned to his desk, reviewing notes and schedules, already planning how to incorporate Jasmine's work into Ethan's daily routine. The mansion, once a place of strict order and control, now held a new element: potential, guidance, and the promise of progress. As he looked out over the city, Robert felt a rare sense of satisfaction. The challenges of yesterday had given way to a solution today. The son who had acted boldly, the tutor who had demonstrated skill, and the household that now adapted to accommodate them, all had contributed to a transformative experience. Robert knew that tomorrow would bring new lessons, new challenges, and new opportunities. But for the first time in days, he felt a quiet confidence. The disruption had been handled, the talent recognized, and the future of the Hawthorne household and Ethan's education had been secured in a way that balanced authority with opportunity. The billionaire finally allowed himself to relax slightly, knowing that the chaos of yesterday had been converted into a structured, productive path forward. And as he watched Ethan and Jasmine walk down the hallway, discussing equations and strategies, he understood one vital truth. Brilliance often arrives unexpectedly, and the measure of leadership is the ability to recognize it, nurture it, and integrate it effectively. The next morning, the Hawthorne mansion hummed with a sense of organized energy that had been absent the day before. The sun filtered through the tall windows of the dining room, illuminating the polished marble floor where Ethan sat with his textbook spread before him. Jasmine was seated beside him, her posture straight, her eyes attentive, and her explanations precise. Robert Hawthorne observed from the doorway, his presence both commanding and calm. The tension from yesterday's confrontation had dissipated, replaced by a quiet curiosity. He had approved Jasmine's formal role, but now he wanted to ensure that the arrangement would produce tangible results. He leaned against the frame, arms crossed, his sharp gaze analyzing every movement. "All right, Ethan," Jasmine began, pointing to a complex equation on the page. "Let's review the problems from yesterday. Remember, understanding the concept is more important than simply arriving at the correct answer." Ethan nodded, pen in hand, his focus evident. "Got it," he said, determination shining in his eyes. "I want to get this right." Robert's attention was drawn not just to Ethan's concentration, but to Jasmine's methodical approach. She wasn't just repeating formulas or giving answers. She was teaching him to think critically, to understand the reasoning behind each step. Every question she posed, every correction she offered, encouraged Ethan to analyze and deduce rather than memorize. It was clear that this partnership, this structured tutoring, was more than effective. It was transformative. Robert allowed himself a small, approving nod. Perhaps he had underestimated the value of nurturing talent in unexpected ways. Ethan's pen scratched across the page, pausing occasionally as he worked through a particularly challenging problem. "Wait, I think I've got it," he exclaimed, a spark of excitement lighting his young face. "Show me," Jasmine said, leaning over to examine his work. Ethan explained his reasoning, step by step, while Jasmine listened carefully, occasionally offering guidance or asking probing questions. The conversation was calm, focused, and productive. Robert watched silently, noting the way Ethan's confidence was growing under her guidance. The boy's eyes no longer held the uncertainty that had dominated yesterday. Instead, there was clarity, focus, and a quiet pride. After a few moments, Jasmine looked up at Robert. "Sir, he's improving rapidly. He's grasping concepts that were difficult for him before. With consistent practice, I believe he can excel in his upcoming exams." Robert's lips pressed together in a thoughtful line. He had always valued results, precision, and measurable progress. The improvement in Ethan's understanding was evident and undeniable. Jasmine's skill was not just evident, it was quantifiable. "I see," he said slowly. "Continue with the same level of rigor, Jasmine. Ensure that Ethan remains challenged but not overwhelmed." And Ethan, he stepped closer, placing a hand on his son's shoulder. "Remember, consistency is key. You cannot rely on one day of effort. Learning requires dedication, focus, and discipline." Ethan nodded earnestly. "I understand, Dad. I'll keep practicing." Jasmine smiled, a quiet reassurance in her expression. "Ethan is very capable, sir. With continued guidance, he will meet your expectations and his own." Robert allowed himself a small nod. The initial chaos of yesterday had given way to structure and potential. He realized that talent, when nurtured properly, could yield results far beyond what was initially imagined. The combination of his son's determination and Jasmine's guidance was already producing measurable progress. He glanced at the clock. It was nearly noon, yet the room held a calm intensity. Ethan was fully engaged, and Jasmine maintained her focus, ensuring that every question was understood before moving on. The atmosphere had shifted dramatically from the tension and anger of the previous day to one of concentration, learning, and quiet respect. Robert left the room briefly to attend to other matters, confident that the new routine would continue smoothly in his absence. When he returned an hour later, the scene was much the same. Ethan was working through complex problems with growing confidence, and Jasmine's patient guidance had become a steady rhythm, almost like a conductor leading a symphony of thought. By late afternoon, Robert returned to observe the session's conclusion. Ethan had completed several challenging problems correctly, explaining his reasoning with clarity and confidence. Jasmine offered constructive feedback, pointing out minor errors while reinforcing the concepts he had mastered. "Excellent work today, Ethan," she said, her tone warm but professional. "You've made significant progress. Keep practicing and you'll see even greater improvement." Ethan beamed, a mixture of pride and relief on his young face. "Thanks, Miss Jasmine. I really understand it now." Robert approached, his presence immediately commanding attention. "I am impressed," he said simply, his voice firm but approving. "Your progress reflects dedication and focus. This is the standard I expect from you moving forward." "And Jasmine?" He paused, meeting her eyes. "Your skill and commitment are exceptional. Continue guiding him, but remember the boundaries and expectations we discussed." "Yes, sir," Jasmine replied, nodding respectfully. As the day came to a close, Robert reflected on the events that had unfolded. The initial disruption, the unexpected arrival of Jasmine, had revealed a hidden opportunity. A combination of initiative, skill, and dedication had transformed what could have been a disaster into a productive and beneficial arrangement. He realized that sometimes growth emerged not from strict adherence to rules alone, but from recognizing talent, encouraging initiative, and integrating new potential into a structured framework. Jasmine's presence was no longer a challenge to his authority. It was an asset. Ethan closed his books, stretching slightly, a satisfied smile on his face. "Thanks, Miss Jasmine. I feel ready for my test tomorrow." Jasmine smiled warmly. "You've earned this confidence, Ethan. Keep up the good work, and you'll do great." Robert watched from a distance, a quiet satisfaction settling over him. The household had adapted, the new routine was effective, and his son's education was progressing under capable guidance. The events of yesterday had tested patience, authority, and understanding, but they had also revealed potential, talent, and a pathway for growth. For the first time in days, Robert felt a sense of calm. The chaos had been transformed into structure, and the unexpected disruption had become an opportunity for progress. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but today's lessons had set a foundation built on skill, dedication, and the careful balance of authority and opportunity. The following morning, the Hawthorne mansion was unusually quiet. The usual hum of city traffic felt distant, almost muted, as if the events of the past week had cast a new rhythm over the household. Ethan sat at the grand dining table, textbooks and notebooks neatly arranged, his pencil moving steadily across the pages. Jasmine was beside him, her attention unwavering, explaining complex problems with clarity and patience. Robert Hawthorne entered quietly, observing from the doorway. There was a subtle tension beneath the calm of the morning, an unspoken test. Today would reveal not just the results of yesterday's tutoring session, but also the strength of trust and discipline between father, son, and tutor. "Ethan," Robert began, his voice calm but commanding. "Today is a continuation of yesterday's lesson. I expect diligence and focus. Jasmine will guide you, but your commitment will determine the outcome." "Yes, Dad," Ethan replied, eyes bright with determination. Jasmine nodded, her own expression serious. "Let's begin with the new problems. I want you to explain your reasoning as we go, not just give the answer." The morning passed in a focused rhythm. Ethan solved equations, applied logic to word problems, and followed Jasmine's guidance meticulously. Each correct answer brought a small smile to Jasmine's face, and every hesitation was met with patient explanation, reinforcing understanding rather than simply correcting mistakes. Robert observed silently, his arms crossed, analyzing every interaction. The events of the previous day had already shifted his perspective, but today he was watching for deeper signs: initiative, attention to detail, and adherence to boundaries. He wanted to ensure that his decision to employ Jasmine formally was producing the results he expected. After nearly 2 hours of focused work, Ethan paused, wiping sweat from his brow. "I think I've got the hang of this now," he said, voice tinged with pride. "Good," Jasmine replied, smiling faintly. "Understanding comes from effort. You've put in the work, and now you're reaping the benefits." Robert stepped forward, his gaze sharp yet measured. "Ethan, I need to discuss something important with you. Yesterday, you acted without permission, bringing Jasmine here. While your intentions were commendable, the action itself cannot be ignored. You must understand the consequences of overstepping boundaries. Ethan looked down, a mix of guilt and apprehension evident on his face. I understand, Dad. I just wanted to do well. I didn't mean to disobey. Robert's stern expression softened slightly. Intentions matter, but so does judgment. Today is a test, not of mathematics, but of trust. I need to see that you can combine initiative with respect for rules. Do you understand? Yes, Dad, I promise, Ethan said earnestly. Jasmine watched quietly, understanding the significance of this conversation. She had guided Ethan academically, but now he was learning an equally important lesson about responsibility and integrity. Robert continued, pacing slowly. Ethan, your actions yesterday could have caused chaos, but instead, they revealed potential. Potential that must now be channeled responsibly. I am trusting you to learn from this, to respect the rules, and to understand that trust is earned, not given freely. Ethan nodded, absorbing each word. I understand, Dad. I won't make the same mistake again. Robert turned his attention to Jasmine. And you, Jasmine, have shown remarkable skill and composure. Your guidance is invaluable, but you must continue to respect the structure of this household. Boundaries are not optional. They are essential. Yes, sir, Jasmine replied firmly. I will respect all rules and expectations. With the preliminary conversation concluded, Jasmine returned to the textbooks, continuing Ethan's lesson. The session resumed with renewed focus and an undercurrent of accountability. Every problem Ethan solved now carried not just the weight of learning, but also the responsibility of earning trust. Hours passed in this disciplined rhythm, the quiet intensity of learning filling the mansion. Robert occasionally stepped into the room, observing Ethan's progress, noting the clarity in his thought process and the confidence in his responses. Jasmine guided him with patience, reinforcing both understanding and discipline. Finally, as the afternoon sun began to dip below the skyline, Robert called a pause. Ethan, show me what you've learned today, he commanded. Ethan carefully explained each problem, detailing his reasoning, the steps he followed, and the logic behind his solutions. Jasmine observed silently, proud of the boy's progress. Robert listened intently, nodding occasionally, impressed by the clarity and depth of understanding Ethan now displayed. When Ethan finished, Robert leaned back slightly, allowing a rare smile to grace his features. Well done, Ethan. You have demonstrated both understanding and discipline. You have earned my trust today. Ethan's eyes lit up, a mixture of relief and pride washing over him. Thank you, Dad. I'll keep working hard. Robert turned to Jasmine, his expression serious but approving. Jasmine, your guidance has been exceptional. Continue mentoring him, but always within the boundaries we've established. Today has shown that with the right structure, talent and initiative can produce remarkable results. Jasmine nodded respectfully. Yes, sir. I will ensure that Ethan continues to progress while respecting all expectations. As the session concluded, a sense of accomplishment settled over the mansion. The disruption of yesterday had transformed into a structured, productive routine. Ethan had not only learned mathematics, but also an invaluable lesson about trust, responsibility, and the consequences of his actions. Robert walked to the window, watching the city lights begin to twinkle against the darkening sky. For the first time in days, he felt a sense of calm satisfaction. The unexpected challenge had become an opportunity, a chance to cultivate talent, reinforce discipline, and strengthen the bonds of trust within his household. Ethan and Jasmine gathered their materials. The session concluded, but the sense of progress lingered. Robert knew that today's test of trust was just the beginning. There would be more challenges, more lessons, and more opportunities to guide his son and integrate Jasmine's skills into the family's structure. Yet for now, he allowed himself a moment of quiet pride. The son who had acted impulsively, the tutor who had demonstrated exceptional talent, and the household that had adapted to accommodate them, all had contributed to a transformative experience. The mansion was no longer just a house of order and wealth. It had become a place of growth, learning, and unexpected opportunity. And as Robert observed Ethan and Jasmine walking down the hallway, discussing the next day's problems, he understood one vital truth. Trust, when earned and respected, could transform challenges into profound lessons, shaping character and creating lasting impact. The following week brought a new rhythm to the Hawthorne mansion. Ethan's mornings were consumed with focused study sessions, guided meticulously by Jasmine. Robert observed from a distance, occasionally entering the room to monitor progress, his sharp eyes noting every detail. The unexpected disruption of the previous week had evolved into a structured routine, and the household had adjusted to accommodate it. Yet Robert knew that growth required more than consistency. It required challenge. He wanted to test not only Ethan's academic progress, but also Jasmine's ability to maintain authority and guidance within the household structure. One morning, Robert called them both to his study. His tone was calm but firm, commanding attention immediately. "Ethan, Jasmine," he began, "today we introduce a challenge. This is not merely a test of knowledge, but of adaptability, discipline, and teamwork. You will face problems beyond the standard curriculum, requiring critical thinking and creativity. Are you prepared?" Ethan's eyes widened with anticipation. "Yes, Dad. I want to do my best." Jasmine's expression remained composed, her posture straight. "I am ready, sir. We will tackle these challenges together." Robert handed Ethan a stack of complex problems, each one more advanced than anything he had encountered before. They involved multiple steps, logical reasoning, and real-world applications, designed to test both his understanding and his ability to think independently. "Begin," Robert commanded, stepping back to observe. Ethan plunged into the problems, pen scratching across the paper. Jasmine guided him through the process, offering hints when necessary, but insisting that he arrive at solutions through reasoning rather than rote memorization. The session was intense, with silence punctuated only by Ethan's questions and Jasmine's clear, precise instructions. After an hour of focused work, Ethan leaned back, exhausted but determined. I think I figured most of them out," he said, a mixture of relief and pride in his voice. "Let's review," Jasmine suggested, scanning his answers carefully. She pointed out minor mistakes and explained subtleties he had overlooked, ensuring that he understood each correction. Ethan listened intently, absorbing every detail and immediately applying the insights to subsequent problems. Robert watched closely, noting not just Ethan's progress but Jasmine's effectiveness in maintaining engagement and authority. She had transformed a potentially stressful challenge into a productive learning experience, demonstrating patience, skill, and an ability to adapt to his son's needs. After a long session, Robert called a pause. "Ethan, explain your reasoning for each problem. I want to see not just the answers, but the process that led to them." Ethan carefully articulated each step, his voice steady and confident. Jasmine observed silently, proud of his ability to articulate reasoning under pressure. Robert listened intently, impressed by the clarity and depth of understanding Ethan now displayed. "This is impressive," Robert said finally, his tone carrying approval. "You've demonstrated initiative, focus, and critical thinking. Jasmine, your guidance has been exemplary. Together, you have turned a challenge into an achievement." Ethan's face lit up with pride, but he quickly added, "Dad, I couldn't have done it without Miss Jasmine. She helped me understand the tricky parts." Robert nodded, acknowledging both of their efforts. "Indeed, success often requires collaboration and guidance. You've both demonstrated the value of discipline, focus, and teamwork. Remember this lesson. It will serve you well beyond academics." Jasmine smiled, a subtle warmth in her expression. Ethan has shown remarkable improvement. He is capable of more than he realizes, and with continued guidance, he can achieve even greater results. Robert allowed himself a rare moment of satisfaction. The disruption that had initially caused frustration had evolved into a structured, productive environment where talent and dedication could flourish. Ethan was learning, Jasmine was guiding effectively, and the household had adapted to integrate this new dynamic seamlessly. Yet Robert knew that challenges were not always predictable. He had seen the potential for both growth and disruption. The key was maintaining balance, recognizing initiative and skill while enforcing boundaries and structure. Jasmine had proven herself capable of navigating this balance, and Ethan had demonstrated that he could rise to expectations when guided properly. As the session concluded, Robert addressed them once more. Today was a test of adaptability and focus. You have both succeeded admirably. But remember, challenges will continue. Success is not a single achievement, but a continuous effort to improve, learn, and grow. Ethan nodded eagerly. I understand, Dad. I'll keep working hard. Jasmine's expression reflected quiet determination. We will continue to progress, sir. I will ensure that Ethan's learning remains effective and structured. Robert allowed himself a small smile. The mansion, once a place of rigid order, had become a space of growth, learning, and unexpected opportunity. The son who had acted impulsively, the tutor who had demonstrated exceptional talent, and the household that had adapted to accommodate them, all had contributed to a transformative experience. As he observed Ethan and Jasmine gathering their materials, preparing for the next session, Robert felt a sense of calm anticipation. The test had revealed strengths, weaknesses, and potential, and the lessons learned today would shape not only Ethan's education, but also his character. The city outside continued its relentless pace, unaware of the quiet triumphs unfolding within the mansion. But inside, the dynamics had shifted permanently. Trust, guidance, and structured opportunity had transformed a moment of disruption into a foundation for future success. Robert turned back to his desk, considering the days ahead. There would be new challenges, both academic and personal, but he felt confident that the lessons of initiative, discipline, and collaboration would continue to guide them. The unexpected challenge had revealed not just potential, but resilience, adaptability, and the importance of nurturing talent under careful supervision. Ethan and Jasmine walked down the hallway, discussing upcoming problems and strategies, a harmonious rhythm settling over the mansion. Robert understood that leadership, guidance, and mentorship were as crucial as authority and discipline. Today's success was not just in answers solved, but in trust earned, skills developed, and relationships strengthened. The mansion had become more than a home. It was a place of opportunity, growth, and unexpected transformation. And Robert, observing quietly from his study, understood that sometimes the greatest lessons emerge from the most unforeseen circumstances. It was early morning in the Hawthorne mansion, and sunlight streamed through the tall windows, illuminating the grand dining room where Ethan sat with his textbooks open. Jasmine was beside him, guiding him through an advanced set of problems that stretched beyond the standard curriculum. Robert stood nearby, observing silently, the weight of his authority balanced with a growing sense of admiration for the unexpected synergy between tutor and student. Today was different. There was an air of anticipation that neither Ethan nor Jasmine could fully articulate, a feeling that the session would mark a turning point. Robert had scheduled a series of particularly challenging problems, designed to test not only Ethan's knowledge, but also his ability to think critically, creatively, and independently. Ethan, Jasmine began, her voice calm yet commanding. Today we're going to tackle some problems that require reasoning in multiple steps. Remember, it's not just about the answer, it's about understanding the process. Ethan nodded, determination evident in his posture. I'm ready, Miss Jasmine. Let's do it. Robert leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, his gaze sharp and evaluative. He had seen progress, yes, but today he wanted to witness true understanding, the moment when the lessons internalized would become instinct. The session began with a series of complex equations, each problem carefully crafted to challenge Ethan's comprehension and application skills. Jasmine guided him through each step, offering subtle hints and corrections, ensuring that he arrived at solutions through reasoning rather than memorization. Ethan's brow furrowed in concentration, and for the first time, he tackled problems with a level of confidence and focus that surprised even him. Wait, I think I see it now, Ethan exclaimed, pointing to a particularly tricky equation. If I apply the distributive property here first, then combine like terms, it works perfectly. Exactly, Jasmine said, her eyes bright with approval. You've understood the concept. See how breaking it into steps makes the problem manageable? Robert's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. He had witnessed this moment before, in business negotiations and strategic decisions, when comprehension shifted from rote understanding to true insight. Ethan had reached that point now, and Robert's pride, though seldom openly displayed, surged quietly. The next set of problems required Ethan to apply mathematical concepts to real-world scenarios, testing his ability to think creatively. Jasmine presented word problems involving budgeting, probability, and geometry, challenging Ethan to reason through each situation. Think carefully, Jasmine instructed. What assumptions are we making? How do the variables interact? Ethan worked diligently, occasionally glancing at Jasmine for reassurance, but increasingly relying on his own judgment. Step by step, he navigated the problems, reasoning out loud and correcting minor mistakes as he went. Robert watched, silently impressed, noting that the boy was not just learning mathematics, he was learning critical thinking. After several hours of intense focus, Ethan leaned back, exhausted but exhilarated. "I think I've solved them all," he exclaimed. "Let's review," Jasmine suggested, scanning his answers carefully. She nodded approvingly at most of his solutions, offering gentle corrections where necessary, ensuring comprehension rather than mere accuracy. "You've done remarkably well, Ethan. Your understanding has grown tremendously." Robert stepped forward, his expression serious yet approving. "Ethan, show me your reasoning for each problem. I want to see not just that you got the answer, but how you arrived at it." Ethan carefully articulated each step, explaining his thought process with clarity and confidence. Jasmine observed silently, proud of the transformation she had nurtured over the past weeks. Robert listened, impressed by the depth of understanding and the precision of his son's explanations. "This is impressive," Robert said finally. "You have demonstrated not only comprehension but initiative, focus, and reasoning. Jasmine, your guidance has been exemplary. Together you have achieved a breakthrough." Ethan's face lit up with pride, a mixture of relief and joy washing over him. "Thank you, Dad. I couldn't have done it without Miss Jasmine." Robert nodded, acknowledging both of their efforts. Indeed, success often requires guidance, collaboration, and dedication. Today you have earned recognition for both. Jasmine smiled, her expression a mix of pride and satisfaction. Ethan has shown incredible growth. With continued effort, he will surpass expectations and achieve remarkable results. Robert allowed himself a moment of rare satisfaction. The chaos of the initial disruption had transformed into structure, learning, and growth. Ethan's initiative, Jasmine's skill, and the household's adaptation had created an environment where talent could thrive. Yet Robert also understood that this breakthrough was not the end but a milestone. Growth was continuous, and challenges would continue to test both patience and perseverance. Today's success, however, was undeniable, and it reinforced the value of recognizing potential, nurturing talent, and balancing guidance with discipline. As the session concluded, Robert addressed them once more. "Ethan, today marks a turning point. You have demonstrated not only understanding, but the ability to apply knowledge creatively. Jasmine, continue guiding him, maintaining the balance between mentorship and structure." "Yes, sir," Jasmine replied, nodding respectfully. Ethan gathered his materials, a broad smile on his face. "Thank you, Miss Jasmine. I feel ready for anything now." Robert watched them walk down the hallway, a sense of accomplishment settling over the mansion. The son who had acted impulsively, the tutor who had demonstrated exceptional skill, and the household that had adapted to accommodate them, all had contributed to a transformative experience. The mansion, once a place of rigid order and control, had become a space of growth, learning, and opportunity. The breakthrough of today was a testament to the power of initiative, talent, and structured guidance. And as Robert observed Ethan and Jasmine discussing the next set of challenges, he understood one vital truth. Brilliance often emerges from unexpected circumstances, and the measure of leadership is the ability to recognize it, nurture it, and integrate it effectively. For the first time in days, Robert felt a quiet satisfaction. The disruption that had once caused frustration had become a foundation for achievement, trust, and potential. Tomorrow would bring new lessons, new challenges, and new opportunities. But today had proven that initiative, skill, and guidance could transform the unexpected into remarkable success. The evening sun cast a warm glow over the Hawthorne mansion, reflecting off the polished marble floors and grand windows. The air carried a sense of calm, a quiet after the storm of the past weeks. Robert Hawthorne sat in his study, reviewing financial reports and correspondence, but his mind was only half focused. His thoughts kept drifting to the events that had unfolded. Ethan's initiative, Jasmine's guidance, and the transformation of the household dynamic. He leaned back in his chair, recalling the chaotic morning when his son had brought Jasmine into the mansion without permission. At the time, he had felt a surge of anger and disbelief. A young boy, only 10 years old, had dared to break the rules of the household. And yet, as the hours and days had passed, that act of disobedience had revealed something remarkable: initiative, talent, and dedication that could not be ignored. Robert glanced at the clock. It was nearly dinner time. The mansion was alive with a different kind of energy now: calm, productive, and confident. Ethan was upstairs, finishing his last set of practice problems, while Jasmine ensured that he completed each one correctly, reinforcing concepts and building his understanding. Robert allowed himself a rare smile. The disruption of the past week had transformed into structure, guidance, and progress. His son had grown not just in knowledge, but in responsibility, learning the importance of trust and the consequences of his actions. Jasmine had proven herself invaluable, her patience, skill, and adaptability making her more than a tutor. She was a mentor, a guide, and an integral part of the household. The door to his study opened quietly, and Jasmine entered, her posture professional but relaxed. "Sir, Ethan has completed his final set of problems for the day. He's showing remarkable understanding and confidence." Robert nodded approvingly. "Excellent. His progress is evident. Your guidance has been pivotal, Jasmine. I appreciate the dedication and structure you've brought to this household." Jasmine's expression softened slightly, reflecting pride and humility. "Thank you, sir. It's been a privilege to work with Ethan. He has great potential, and he's willing to put in the effort to achieve it." Robert stood and walked toward the window, gazing out over the New York skyline. "You've helped transform a challenging situation into an opportunity. That is a rare quality. It is not enough to be skilled. You must also recognize potential and nurture it. You have done both admirably." Jasmine bowed her head slightly. "I will continue to uphold that standard, sir. Ethan's development is my priority." Robert turned to her, his expression serious yet approving. "And you will continue to operate within the structure and boundaries we established. Discipline and guidance are inseparable. Remember that as you mentor him." "Yes, sir," she replied firmly. As she left the study to check on Ethan, Robert returned to his desk, reflecting on the past days. The events had been a test, not just of intellect, but of patience, trust, and leadership. He had learned as much as his son, observing the way Jasmine managed challenges and guided Ethan through complex problems. The disruption that had initially provoked anger had ultimately reinforced the values he held dear: initiative, responsibility, and the cultivation of talent. Later that evening, the family gathered in the dining room for dinner. The atmosphere was calm, warm, and composed. Ethan spoke animatedly about the problems he had solved, his confidence evident in every word. Jasmine listened attentively, providing guidance and encouragement, while Robert observed silently, allowing the interaction to unfold naturally. "Ethan, I'm impressed," Robert said finally, his tone carrying quiet authority and approval. "You have not only learned the material, but demonstrated responsibility, focus, and growth. You've earned my trust." Ethan's eyes lit up, pride and relief mixing in his expression. "Thank you, Dad. I'll keep working hard, I promise." Jasmine nodded, smiling warmly. "Ethan has shown great determination. With continued effort, he will continue to excel." Robert allowed himself a rare moment of personal satisfaction. The household had transformed. Chaos had given way to structure, disobedience had revealed potential, and guidance had nurtured growth. He realized that leadership was not merely about control. It was about recognizing opportunity, cultivating talent, and balancing discipline with encouragement. After dinner, as Ethan prepared for bed, Robert called him aside. "Ethan, remember what you learned this week. Initiative is valuable, but judgment is equally important. Trust is earned through responsibility, effort, and integrity. You have taken a significant step in understanding that." Ethan nodded solemnly. "I understand, Dad. I won't forget it." Robert patted him on the shoulder, a rare gesture of affection. "Good. Keep learning, keep growing, and remember that I am proud of your progress." Later, alone in his study, Robert reflected on Jasmine's role in the household. Her presence had been unexpected, but it had become indispensable. He decided to formalize her position further, ensuring that her contributions were recognized and that she remained an integral part of Ethan's growth and education. The night settled over the mansion, calm and quiet. The city lights twinkled in the distance, reflecting off the windows of the grand building. The challenges of the past week had transformed into lessons learned, growth achieved, and relationships strengthened. For the first time in days, Robert allowed himself to relax fully, confident that the household was in capable hands. Ethan had learned responsibility, Jasmine had demonstrated skill and dedication, and the mansion had adapted to integrate both seamlessly into its structure. As he gazed out the window one last time before retiring, Robert understood one vital truth. Sometimes the greatest lessons arise from unexpected circumstances, and the measure of true leadership lies in the ability to recognize talent, nurture it, and guide it wisely. The mansion, once a symbol of strict order and control, had become a space of growth, learning, and opportunity. The disruption that had once caused anger had now become a catalyst for transformation, shaping the future of both Ethan and the household. And as the lights dimmed across the city, Robert Hawthorne felt a rare sense of contentment. The storm had passed, chaos had turned into structure, potential had been realized, and the Hawthorne family, strengthened by lessons learned and trust earned, was poised for a future defined not by fear or control, but by guidance, understanding, and growth.